From the New York Post, FBI had 26 informants at January 6 Capitol riots. Most were involved. Bombshell DOJ report confirms. They say the FBI had at least 26 CIs on the ground. They call them CHSs, confidential human sources, in Washington, D.C. during J6, storming the Capitol, most of whom engaged in illegal activity during the chaos. The Justice Department's watchdog confirmed in the bombshell report. Leadership at the Bureau had long been adamant that it did not have the sources who orchestrated the riot. That it did not have sources who orchestrated the riot. Questions about whether the FBI had informants involved in the riots were met with conspiracy theory labels by many mainstream media outlets. If you're asking if the violence at the Capitol was part of some operation orchestrated by the FBI, by FBI sources or agents, the answer is no. Outgoing FBI Director Christopher Wray told lawmakers back in July. Wray had long refused to divulge exactly how many informants were present that day. I'm going to go assume it's probably more than just 26. But the DOJ's Office of the Inspector General found that of the FBI's confidential sources on the ground, 4 entered the Capitol in the midst of the riot and 13 went into a restricted area. Only 9 were not found to have engaged in illegal activity, according to the report. Critically, that report also shot down unsubstantiated speculation that the Bureau had agents stoking some of the mayhem that day. Quote, "We found no evidence in the materials we reviewed or in the testimony we received showing or suggesting that the FBI had undercover employees in the various protest crowds or at the Capitol." The report said only 3 of its 26 informants present had been instructed to observe potential domestic terror suspects on the day of the riot. The DOJ watchdog found the rest of the 23 appear to have gone to the Capitol of their own accord. I think this very much adds to the story that we had heard. This goes back to 2022 when AOC says Capitol Police were opening the doors for J6 rioters. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I was shocked because I am no conspiracy theorist. But when AOC proudly informed all of us that J6 was an inside job, I was shocked. Of course, I reviewed the evidence. And as it turns out, at least on some circumstances, the police were posing with some of these insurrectionists, they call them, taking photos and opening, at least what I can see, interior doors. Not only the interior doors, but was an instance where after doors had been opened, the police just stood next to the door and told the protesters, one guy says, "I don't agree with it, but I respect it." These cops were absolutely assisting. Not to mention, one man was acquitted entirely because he argued that a cop waved him in. Sure enough, there is video footage of a cop waving people in. That they try to claim, no, the cop meant something else. He was waving to other cops to come in. Sure, I think AOC is correct. Let me play this video for you. You can hear it right from her, adamantly expressing 2 years ago exactly what happened.
Like Antifa?
And that there were actual officers working with this, and we never got to the bottom of that, and we never got any answers about that. And then to this day, we're just supposed to pretend that that never happened.
What about Antifa?
I have no idea what happened to the people on the inside who were very clearly sympathetic with what was going on and opening the doors wide open for that. And I'm supposed to sit here and pretend like none of that ever happened. And then right afterwards, you have a massive, you just have this idea that throwing money at that problem is going to make it go away without any accountability. And so this is where these things are breaking down. We're not safe. And it's not just about members of Congress not being safe. The food staff workers aren't safe. The janitors aren't safe. Like, we need to get to the bottom of this.
You see what she was saying? She was calling for an investigation. She wants answers as to the federal law enforcement elements that were actively assisting J6. Well, I agree, AOC. It sounds like an inside job. And I'm going to stress this, too, in all seriousness, outside of any tongue-in-cheek joke or something like that. If one police officer, just one, helped the rioters in any way, and we know they did, that's an inside job. Okay? What they're trying to do is when we say it was an inside job, they immediately jump to the claim that it means the government orchestrated the plot and made it all happen. No. Listen, if there is a bank, okay, this is what we said 2 years ago when we talked about this. If there's a bank and like 3 guys go to rob it and one security guard opens the door and puts a wedge in it and then walks away, we call that an inside job. Now, imagine if that happened and the police came in and said, looks like it was an inside job because this guy, who works here, opened the door for the robbers. And then immediately the media said, are you implying that the bank manager, along with all of its staff, coordinated with the police to steal the money? No, I didn't say that at all. I'm saying there was at least a certain or small element of internal security and law enforcement that assisted in this. It could be one person, but it's a fact. And now this just adds to it because FBI informants were actually rioting in the building. So what does this mean? What does this ultimately turn into? I mean, Trump's going to pardon these guys. He said what in the first 9 minutes?
I hope he does.
That's what he said. First 20 minutes.
Well, I mean, I hope he does. I don't see any reason to keep these people behind bars anymore.
No, I don't either. What is it, like some 1,500 people almost, something like that?
I don't have any. I honestly don't know. I know it's a lot, but I don't.
Large number.
Is it? I didn't know that it was over 1,000.
Oh, it's like substantially over 1,000. Yeah.
It's
somewhere between it's somewhere between like 1,300 and 1,500.
Yeah, it's like 1,300.
Yeah.
Trump said in the first 20 minutes, it's like the first thing he's going to do, he's going to just pardon.
Well, good. I mean, that should be the case. And the thing that really struck me is the way that the mainstream media or the legacy media or the Democrat-run media is framing this. They're saying that there were no FBI agents, that there were no employees, and they're obfuscating the fact that confidential informants don't actually work for the FBI. But there were confidential informants. So there were people that were working with the FBI, but they weren't FBI agents and they weren't employees. And the fact that the media is running with that, and they're again obfuscating the fact that there were government assets in the crowd, and those people were egging other people on to do things. It's clearly dishonest, and it's frustrating because you've got, this is going to be the narrative that the left is going to spin.
Let's take it up a notch, though. I got a question for you, Mike. We had the journalist Stephen Baker, I believe. I'm not getting his name wrong, am I? He was the one who was criminally charged.
Yeah, he sure was at the Blaze.
Yeah, he said he thinks this is actually a plot from the Pentagon, that they wanted the J6ers to riot, that they were hoping for some violence that they could ultimately use, and that if you look at the actions taken by the federal government since then, it only really makes sense if there actually was extreme violence. All we really got was basically trespass and some vandalism. And if you can even call it trespass on a lot of these cases, the people who broke the windows, that I get. You fight cops, you hit cops, you go to jail, that I get. But there was he and another guy I talked to said that one of the cops working at the Capitol Police evacuated the members of Congress. Had he not done that, they could have gotten hurt, might have been likely, and that he got in trouble for having done that because he was not given orders to evacuate. So it's his opinion that they wanted this to happen. They intentionally didn't bring police or National Guard because they needed an excuse to go after Trump. But I'm curious what you think.
I mean, I would say this: January 6th was a lawful protest permitted by the National Park Service that devolved into a riot. And I think what the Biden Justice Department tried to do with January 6th, along with the January 6th committee, is they tried to use this as an excuse to cancel Trump and cancel Trump's movement, right? They wanted Trump and his ideas, his America First movement, to go away. And so what should have happened is they should have looked at January 6th and said, wait, people who are there legally, people who are outside have, even if you think they're wrong, even if you think they're crazy, they have an absolute First Amendment right to protest their government and protest the election. And then there's a second category of people who trespassed, and there's a dispute whether some people even trespassed if the cops are letting them into the damn building. But let's just presume that they trespass. Okay, then you charge them with trespass. And then there's a third category of people who were violent, and you charge them with violence. But I was a staffer on the Senate Judiciary Committee during the Kavanaugh proceedings when you had protesters threatening violence throughout the Capitol, trespassing into offices, trespassing into restricted zones. Not a damn thing happened to them, right? You look at the BLM and Antifa rioters, the much more deadly and destructive BLM and Antifa rioters. They caused billions in damage. They killed dozens. They essentially get amnesty. So what they did on January 6th is they wanted to lump everyone together, call them insurrectionists, even though no one was charged with insurrection. How many insurrectionists go into a nation's capital unarmed, get to the Senate floor of the nation's capital, walk through velvet ropes, follow police direction, and don't burn down the damn place?
Got an escort.
Yes.
To the Senate chambers.
Yes, they did.
When the Q shaman, of course, was seen on surveillance footage walking around, politely asking police, and police directed him. That's an inside job.
Yeah, and why? So
Shaman wasn't working alone. The police let him in.
and if everyone else is getting charged for January 6th and they're hunting people down for years, and 1,500 people are charged, why weren't these 23 paid FBI contractors? Well, weren't there 23 who were paid, but they just showed up that day, and 3 who were who were working that day, right? There were
3 who the FBI said, why don't you come out? And then there were 23 who showed up at their own volition, who had not allegedly been requested by the FBI.
That means they were just participants.
Yeah.
So why? So why weren't those 23 who were supposedly off duty that day? Why weren't they charged like the rest of the January 6th
11
people?
of those 23 went onto the restricted area outside the Capitol, and of the 3 who were asked to be there, 1 of them went inside the Capitol.
And they weren't charged.
Yeah.
Right. So why weren't they charged if they're off duty? Why weren't they charged?
And another 2 of the 23 went into the Capitol, because it was 3 went in altogether.
So maybe they were on duty, and that's why they weren't charged.
Yeah, it is confusing as to why they weren't charged. How did their names never come up? And then they talk about how the report was saying, people just on the grounds weren't going to be charged.
Well, they're doing that now.
We know that they've been charging them. There's like tons and tons. If you look at the Capitol breach cases and do a search on the DOJ website for trespass, it's like hundreds of entries of people who are charged with trespass.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. They're trying to say that these January 6 protesters tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power on another branch of government. Well, what the hell do they think they did during the Kavanaugh proceedings? They disrupted the proceedings, going 8 seconds into the proceedings. You have Kamala Harris and the paid protesters in the gallery disrupting the proceedings the entire time. They chased senators and threatened them. They threatened them outside of their homes. They tried to obstruct the vote on the Senate floor. I was there for all this. Nothing happens.
You even had Amy Schumer trying to occupy the Supreme Court at one point.
I mean, this is all true, and all this stuff that all of the people outside of the Supreme Court justices' homes, and the person that was threatening Kavanaugh, and all of these things are just swept under.
You mean Chuck Schumer when he went to the Supreme Court and physically threatened Kavanaugh?
Yes,
and
he
Gorsuch,
did.
My former boss.
He did. He by name, yes, absolutely. It's ridiculous that the left is allowed to make these assertions that are so blatantly false, while at the same time the left is incredibly totally guilty of the exact same kind of things that they would lose their mind over.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.